Hi, it's Socially Distant Networking, and I'm Sadie, and this is Freya West. Freya, why don't you introduce
Hello.
yourself?
Hi, I'm Freya West. I am, let's see, if you're going to put it fancy, I'm a multifaceted artist. I do burlesque arts, I produce, I book. I also do a lot of writing, former professional copywriter, now erstwhile blog writer, I guess, or maybe professional copywriter again. We'll see how the world turns.
Yeah, we're all re examining our career paths at this point.
Exactly.
Awesome. How did you get involved in burlesque in the first place?
Yeah, I was living in Chicago at the time and I had just graduated college, but I was not 21 yet. And me and my friends were looking for a place that we could, drink underage, as 20-year-olds are wont to do. And there was a burlesque show that was in a theater, and we knew that they didn't card. So we like snuck in some booze to try and go to this show. And that was honestly the only reason I went. I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to care about this. But then the show was amazing. I like fell in love with all of these like performers of all shapes and sizes who were doing their own choreography to their own music. And it was, if you see burlesque, it's everything you love about it. Like it was just comedic and sexy and silly and all of those wonderful things. So instead of getting drunk on my booze, I got drunk off of like this art high and then was like, I have to find a way to do this, as so often is our stories. So then I took classes from Michelle Lemore in Chicago, who like I didn't know at the time was like one of the world's premier burlesque performers, which is probably good. I maybe would never have shown up to class had I
Right?
known who she was. And yeah, I took classes with her for about a year, graduated from her school, moved to Nashville a little like about a year after that, and I've been down here doing the thing ever since.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you founded a school too, right?
I did, yeah. When I moved to Nashville, I had been doing burlesque for about 2 years down here, and a lot of women would come up to me after shows and do the same expression that I had when I saw a show, and were like, "How do I do this?" Or even just like, "How do I feel more at home in my body?" Because it seems like y'all are really at home in your bodies. And so I was like, I had already gone through my yoga teacher training. So I knew how to teach bodies and I had experience with that. And I was like, I can do a beginner class. Like I'll do, a small beginner thing. And so I started out in my friend's dance studio. I had like one student for a long time. And then I had two students. And then slowly that snowballed into eventually we had our own studio that we opened in 2014. And then through mostly the growth of the burlesque scene, I was able to sort of transition from full time teacher and studio owner to full time performer and booker. And so I closed the studio because that's the way that my career was going. But there's still like a really thriving scene here. I'm very proud of the things that we've built. And most of the people who perform in Nashville were under my tutelage. So it's really cool to like watch them blossom and create all their own shows, whether that's Neo or, someone's doing a Muppets burlesque show and like all sorts of wonderful, beautiful art in Nashville now.
Awesome. So what did you what did you find was the biggest challenge of running a school?
Oh, what wasn't a challenge? Running a school is maybe the better answer. I mean, running a school is wonderful, and it was um, the things that I'm like trying to figure out where to start with it because it's such a huge endeavor. So, a lot of people run schools but don't necessarily lease their own building.
Right.
I was a crazy person and decided that I wanted to have my own studio, my own space that was just ours. I found this rundown warehouse, but like the space was perfect. It was 3,300 square feet. So I was like, we've got room to do shows. We've got room for our own dressing room. We've got room for merch, really room to grow and expand. We put down our own flooring in there. So like we put our own floating floor in the back. We like ripped up the terrible carpet. We like painted all the walls. We like redid some we did our own lighting in the top, to make it more like what a dance studio should be like and less of an industrial warehouse. So just getting started was a lot, but we had a Kickstarter. Our goal was $6,000 and we ended up raising $10,000 to
Dude, that's
start.
awesome.
Yeah, so it was really incredible to see that like there was this want in the community to have our own space. And especially at the time, a lot of venues didn't want to do burlesque. They didn't really know what that was and they didn't trust it. So we were sort of able to like incubate that. And then by the time we closed, almost all the venues in town host one burlesque show or another, which is really great.
Yeah.
So it's grown enough that we sort of we didn't need the studio anymore, which is actually a really cool thing. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, the I know other people who have tried to open schools, whether it was like aerial schools or dance schools or whatever. The financial outlay and the insurance and just modifying a space and like the overhead part of it was way more of the challenge than the personnel challenges of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is the overhead is a lot. Like you just said, it's all of those pieces, like the insurance and then being in Nashville. I know that some studios like skate by without having music rights. The moment we started building, like ASCAP and BMI were at my door and they were like, hi, we're so happy you started a school. Please give us all this money because I know that you're using music that has our rights, you know?
Right.
And we do. And we had shows. So we had to just immediately start paying for those music rights, which like I am happy for musicians to have money. I'm not super happy for BMI to have my money.
Yeah.
I'd rather pay those musicians directly. But yeah, it was all of those sorts of things, those bills that like you really need someone who's like full-time managing those. And then you need someone who's full-time managing the day-to-day in the studio. We are really lucky in that we had a work study program. So all of our babes who worked our front desk, they worked for us for free, but they got mentorship from myself and from Chandeliers. They were able to use the studio whenever they wanted, and they were able to take all the classes they wanted for free. And we had some really amazing people who really wanted to donate their time and help the studio grow. And like they were the reason we were able to keep going for so long. Because for a while it was just myself and Shan who were cleaning everything, who are running everything. We would run to the front desk and be like, hi, welcome to class, and then run to the back and then teach the class. And then if someone might wander back and forth. So, it was a little unprofessional for a while, but that's what you do. You have to do what you can.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's a story that everyone that has a startup like learning space has definitely dealt with.
And I mean, I think students know that too, right? Like, unless someone has just never gone to like a dance studio ever, which we had a couple of those folks who were kind of like, oh, you're running everything? And I was like, yep, this is who we are. We're very DIY here.
Right.
Which is very burlesque. So that's okay too.
Totally. Well, I think it also, in a way, makes it more authentic too, where, it's like you're very much more of a real person whenever it's like, hi, I checked you in and now I'm teaching your class.
Authentic. I like that. I'm going to steal that. Instead of saying unprofessional, I'm going to be like, yes, we're just very authentic here. That's why we do everything.
Right. So, a couple years ago, you started working with a couple of the places on Music Row and doing burlesque shows are they with live music or are they both?
Yes.
Or, tell us about that.
So, not Music Row, to be fair. Music Row is more the recording studio side of Nashville. We're on Broadway and Printers Alley, which is more like the big tourist scene where if you come to Nashville and you want to go honky tonkin', you're probably going on Lower Broadway. So I started working with Skull's Rainbow Room, which was a burlesque house back in the 40s through I think the 70s. I'm not quite sure when they stopped doing burlesque, but was, a venue that had live music. Andy Griffith was their house comedian for a long time, but like Elvis played there, Johnny Cash played there, Jimi Hendrix played there. Like it has so much amazing history, not just to Nashville, but also like in the music scene in general. And it was owned by this really kooky man, David Skull Shulman, who was, he loved Hee Haw. It was his favorite TV show. And he loved it so much that he started bringing food from his restaurant there. And then they were like, who is this kooky man who is just like has such a huge personality? So they actually made him like an honorary cast member, and he's in some of the sketches if you watch the show. And then he was able to get a lot of their musical guests to come play at Skulls in Nashville. He was unfortunately murdered at his place of business at the bar. It was a robbery gone wrong in 1998, and then the place was shuttered for 16 years. And then the man who owned the bar next door, he owned that building and bought the building Skulls was in, and he really wanted to bring Skulls back to life. So that was in 2015 is when we opened, and he had met Gigi LaFemme, another Nashville-based performer and producer, at an event somewhere else in Nashville, and basically told her like, hey, I'm doing this. Burlesque is a huge part of this venue. I really want burlesque to be back here. And so Gigi ran that for a while. She got us up and running. And so every single night to start, we were doing burlesque to recorded tracks. And then about 4 years ago, I don't know, 3 years ago, my math might be off. We started doing it with a live band. And so now we run burlesque 3 nights a week at Skulls every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. And we have a live band, and it's wonderful. And we do long form burlesque there. So it's about 10-minute acts, 2 songs long. Yeah, it's fabulous. We still have the original checkerboard stage that was there. We get to talk a lot about the history of burlesque, the history of Skulls. So it's really cool to like bring burlesque back to this place that I had been for so long. Because in Nashville, we don't have a lot of those super historic venues. Right. There was a huge fire in Nashville in the 70s, and it destroyed a lot of those sort of historic buildings. And also any seedy history in Nashville tends to be like really swept under the rug because, you know, Southern values or something. Right. Yeah. And then about actually starting in November, we just started a show by the same owners who own Skulls, also own Nudie's Honky Tonk, which is on Lower Broadway. And so now we do a country and a rock and roll set on Broadway, which is like just really fun to be able to say like, hey, I get to perform, you know, on Lower Broadway, which is a dream for many local musicians. Yeah. And it's like, you know, we get to just see these a lot of times at both Skulls and Nudies, like we're performing for tourists who've never seen burlesque before and maybe wouldn't have gone in their hometowns. But once they come to our show, they're like, this is so fun. Like, I want to go see more of this. And so we get to, after the show, be like, well, where do you live? And they're like, oh, Atlanta or like Portland. And I'm like, you have amazing burlesque scenes. Go see that when you're home. And they're like, oh, okay, I will. So, you know, I don't know how many of those people go home and actually do that, but I hope that they do. And it's cool to sort of be like the gateway to burlesque.
Yeah, totally. So do you find that working in an environment where it's mostly or heavily a tourist crowd is different from people who come and see you regularly? Like when I've come up and worked with you, it's been shows that definitely were primarily locals and regulars.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're totally different, right? Like from the way I host a lot for our downtown shows, for our tourist shows. And, you know, it's made me a better MC, like by and far, right? Because if I'm performing and hosting for my local crowd, like I know what's going to make them laugh. They know the performers. We can have inside jokes. If I'm performing for tourists and I'm talking at them, they might be really with me and we might have some good banter, but they might also be just totally dead. Right. And then I have to like try and bring them alive and make them wake up and make them care about this thing that, you know, maybe they've had all day of sightseeing. And it's, you know, it's not necessarily that it's their fault. It's just like, what have you been doing all day? If you've been just inundated all day, then you're going to be tired by the time you come to a show at 11 p.m. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, there's also sometimes where the dancers will do, you know, really beautiful, like burlesque specific tricks, like in the way that costumes come off and stuff. And the tourist audience just has no, like, they don't know. So they're just like, oh, that was fine. I'm glad that came off, you know, whereas for a local audience, we're really lucky. As you know, in Nashville, we have like the best local audiences anywhere in the world. Yeah, I feel like they love burlesque. They love to cheer for it. They really want to be interactive. So, yeah, we're really spoiled there. So it's nice to have a balance of having really spoiled, like wonderful, wonderful people you get to see for local shows. And then also this tourist where you really, you know, you have to work a little bit harder, but it makes you a better performer too. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you feel like the acts have to be much different? Like, do you have to kind of dial back and make them broader and like not do some of the more transgressive or political?
So mostly what we do is like classic, like
Right.
neoclassic there. And that is for a number of reasons. For one, it's what tourists are expecting to see. Like if they know what burlesque kind of is, but they haven't seen anything, like that's what they came to see. So I
Right.
want to give them what they came to see. And you know, it's live band. So like we do rock and roll shows, and like one of the songs that our performers does is like, I'm Afraid of Americans, right? So it's
Yeah.
not that you can't do like politicals, but it's very like light, and it's very, you have to be really tricky with your subversiveness. The same way when you're doing a corporate event, right? Like you're going to just pick the acts that are right for your audience. You know, we're not there to alienate anyone, and we're there to like draw people in. But when it comes to our local shows, of course, like you can do whatever the fuck you want, you know, like
Right.
make that as weird and political as you want. But having seen like doing it, like if you lose that tourist crowd, like they get scared with just like regular classic burlesque sometimes. Like, you know, someone will like take a corset off and you can see them be like, they're just in a panty and bra. Do I like this? I don't know. Like they get really, really frightened just, and you're like, they're in a bikini. Like what's
Right.
happening? So, you know, it's playing to the audience and then understanding that it's what we're there to do in those venues is to introduce people to burlesque. So it's not like Disney burlesque, but it's definitely not like the full Monty burlesque that you would see if you're going to a normal show.
Right. What's what's the what's your favorite venue you've ever worked in? Ever?
Ooh, my favorite venue ever. Okay, can I cheat a little bit?
Yeah.
So I went on tour in Europe last year, and I was hoping to go again this year, but doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Right.
Um, but they have really unique and wonderful venues there that, of course, we do not have in the U.S. And I did the Hamburg Burlesque Festival last year, and the venue that I performed in was amazing. This big, beautiful theater with like the most incredible lighting and sound crew like I've ever had. I felt like a rock star. But during their Thursday night show, it was in a cave.
What?
So you literally walked into this like venue, and you go downstairs, and then there's this big like kind of seashell cave that you're in, and there are probably like 12 to 15-foot mirrors that are like hung behind the bar and other places, so that like your sight lines are still good no matter where you are. So it's just like this opulent Rococo cave. And I didn't perform there, but I was like, this is the best venue I have ever been in, and I want to see every show that's here. So yeah, I would say that
That's amazing.
it was incredible.
Wow. I Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I was like, this is it. This is the holy grail of venues right here.
Wow. Like, was it in the middle of nowhere, or was it in town? Like what?
No, it's in town. I mean, it's probably more like a medieval like basement, like wine cellar
Yeah,
place than like
still
a
what?
cave.
Like,
But it like you walk in, and it's definitely like the hewn cut rock, right? That
yeah.
from, you know, whenever someone made this, and maybe it was like a medieval speakeasy, or I don't know what it was. I'm going to pretend that it was something really cool, and that's why they built it. It probably was something boring, like here's some storage space that used to be like a water reserve, but
Right.
it was awesome.
That's phenomenal. Wow. um so we all have stories of times that things have gone totally off the rails. Um and like I've had things go off the rails so many times just in general. Like I have stories where like all the AV went disastrous. Like at the beginning of the show, I've had things where like my acts didn't go the way they were supposed to go, let's say. Do you have like one more more notable disaster story?
Hmm.
Because we've all got them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I work at Skulls, we just debuted a couple new shows, and so we tend to switch the themes around. We don't get a rehearsal with the band, so like pretty much you walk on stage having rehearse to the recorded versions of the songs. And they're songs like people know, like Rolling Stones and things like that, right? But you don't know how the band instrumentation is going to play. You don't know how long necessarily they're going to go until you get up on stage. So I feel like, honestly, and maybe, I don't know, I feel like maybe you agree with me here, like an amateur versus a professional performer is someone who knows how to fail spectacularly because stage is just such an unknown. And it doesn't matter, like, certainly prepare as much as you can, because then you can fail spectacularly, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't rehearsed, if you don't know your costume, if you don't know, if you don't have your shit together, then when things go wrong, you're going to just fall down on stage and die, right? But if you have prepared, then you can be like, cool, this is happening now. And you just have your oh shit face that's like, yes, this is exactly what I planned. I'm going to maybe pose until I know what's happening. And then I'm going to have you see me from this angle, right? So that doesn't quite answer your question of like one spectacular fail. Oh, I do have one. When I feel like this was maybe a year after I'd moved to Nashville, I got the opportunity to eat fire with the band Shiny Toy Guns. And I was really excited. And I was like, this is going to be so much fun. And I was working with this promoter who was like really wanted kind of weird artsy things. But then he also booked me to do a fan dance, but he was like, we're going to totally paint your body so that you look really different. And I was like, okay, great. I was performing at a brand new venue. I'd been performing for maybe 2 or 3 years, and the stage was carpeted. And so I did the fire act. It went great. I was like, oh, wonderful. I went to do the fan dance, and I got down to do some floor work, and I'm like waving my fans around. And then I go to stand up. And since I'm totally painted, my foot slides and I just fall back onto the stage. And I was like, and more pretty fan work here. But like the crowd is all these like teenagers who like don't care that I'm there. They're there to see this band, and they're just like, what's happening? And I was like, did I not save it? I saved it, right? It's fine. And I just like, slowly like kind of had to get up with my fans and like be like, ta-da, the end, and okay, bye.
Yep. I have several of those experiences.
Oh, yeah. Falling on stage is definitely like never a good thing. Like a couple months ago that happened to me at Skulls. We have like the checkerboard stage is like 2 steps up, and I have this like diaphanous like almost like a caftan kind of piece that's all rhinestone, and I do that, and I like for some reason decided to like loosen it before I stepped up the stairs. So then I of course step on it as I'm getting back up to the stage, and I did like a skitter like full on like this, and just had to be like, oh. But like luckily what I do at Skulls a lot is I like to add humor to my acts, because for one, it makes those tourists like less scared that I'm in my bra and panties.
Right.
So, like it's that moment where I think you can either win or lose an audience, where like I took a moment and I like stopped what I was doing and I just looked at everyone and like literally did that. Right. And then everyone laughed, and then they were with me, because instead of them being like, what is happening? They were just like, oh, okay, she just really messed up, but like, we're all okay. And now we're in on it. We know that it's live performance,
Right, yeah. And I think that helps build connection too.
Definitely.
Like, because like, I think a lot of times when people are doing glamour type acts, they are so like hyper real, and this idealized image of femininity or whatever it is that they're portraying. And then when you have one of those moments where you kind of like fuck up, and if you acknowledge it, and it helps people to connect with you, because like, oh wait, no, she's so fabulous, but
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the wink and a nod in burlesque is like so important, even if you're doing the most like high classic, like you said, like hyper real, like almost untouchable person. If you don't have, you don't have to have that connection with the audience, but I always love the acts that do better, and oftentimes like, it can come off, instead of coming off as like ethereal, you can come off as snooty. Like I think those, they're definitely different intentions, but from an audience perspective, sometimes it's really hard to tell which one is happening.
Yeah. And I think especially people who aren't experienced with it too, and they don't know what the performer's stage persona is supposed to be. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's that line between being cold and being elegant or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a fear reaction too, like when you're first starting out and you don't have a lot of stage experience, like I mean, I get nervous every time before I go on stage. It's just the way it is. But I think when you're less experienced, like sometimes when you get that fear of like people are going to know I don't know what I'm doing, or people are going to, like all the things that go on in our head, the
Yep.
reaction can be, well, I'm untouchable and, I'm just really fabulous, as opposed to allowing people to share that moment with you, because it's like a fear reaction of saying, if people know that I'm new, or if they know that I don't know what I'm doing, then like this is all going to fall apart.
Right.
Which it's not, but it takes a lot. I think that just is like, there's nothing else to do but just get on stage and just keep doing it, and then realize that like you're not going to die, the audience isn't going to die, like everything is going to be okay.
Right. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading about vulnerability and, in interpersonal relationships, but also I think as a performer, and particularly a performer that works with their bodies. And,
Mm-hmm.
so whether it's theater or dance or whatever, there's this innate vulnerability just for being there, because especially with burlesque, people are watching you and like judging your body and judging how you move, and like and it's just the whole act. Like, not only is the act of burlesque political, it's also like so vulnerable, and that's part of what makes it political to me. And
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think also those are, it's one of those ways where even as a newer performer, like if you can add in, it doesn't have to be comedic, like don't make fun of your body, of course, but like if you kind of like do like, the hip move, and then you're kind of have your hands on it, like, have you seen
Right.
these
Yeah.
hips? It's, you're just sort of like bringing to mind like how silly it is about how serious we take sexuality and how serious we take the judgment of bodies. And so for me, that the body political for me and what I want to do is I just want to turn people's perceptions around of like, why do you think that you need to judge bodies? Why do you think that only this type of body can have fun and this body can't?
Right.
And then like I would like grab my belly on stage like all the time, and like people literally gasp, which is like the best reaction I could hope for. Like the fact that people are like, I thought maybe she just thought we wouldn't notice that she had a belly if she didn't, and I'm like, yeah, I have a belly and that's my body, and it's not a bad thing. And so I, the same way I would grab my thighs or my ass, like I'm going to grab my belly and give it some love and like shake it at you, and like, I don't know. We all want to make our audiences have reactions, and like a gasp is like one of the most powerful reactions you
Right.
can get.
Yeah.
So of course I'm going to
Totally.
use that to my advantage.
So you've written about, body image and body positivity and things like that. Um, did you find How did you get to start writing about it, and how have you found that your writing has been received?
So my college degree is in journalism, and that's what I thought I was going to do with my life. Turns out I picked like burlesque is like a more sustainable career path, like, which is weird.
These
Like at that
days?
time, I didn't
Yeah.
know that journalism was like going to turn into whatever weird things the
Right.
circus the world is now. But yeah, so I've always written and I've always loved writing, and I feel like pretty much as soon as like when I was going through burlesque classes, like I was writing about it. Like I was like, I need to just explore what this experience is like for me. And then about a year after I had finished, like that was when I had this big article that was called like Becoming Burlesque in one of our local papers in Nashville, because I was like, experience was transformational for me. And I wanted to share that. And it's like, even if you don't follow the medium of burlesque, like we all want to transform in ways that make us feel more at home in our bodies, that make us feel more authentically who we are. So it's a universal story, even though mine is specific to burlesque and how I got there. And that was really well received. And I had people share that it was really helpful to them. And so, I don't write as much now as I was doing. Like now I tend to write more Instagram posts and things like that, which seem really silly, but I still get people who are like, this is what I needed to read today. And this is again, the world we live in is like, it takes a lot of energy and effort to read a long form article now.
Yeah.
And it does for me too. Like, we're on our computers all day long. We're staring at screens all day long. It's hard to sit there and just read one long article. So if you can get those little bite-sized pieces, and they can be continuous. Like, I mean, I'll write paragraphs on my Instagram, but I still know it's for Instagram. So I try and make sure that you don't have to scroll to read it. But it's like, if I can brighten your timeline or give you something to think about there, then, that's great. And it's really therapeutic for me too. Like, I'm not up there being like, the wisdom that I have to teach you about yourself is like, because that's awful. Like, please, no one ever do that. And it, like, we all know when we read those people, right? Those social media accounts, we're just like, oh, you sound so fake, And again, I feel like that's fear, right? Like, those people probably do feel that way, but instead of admitting that it's a journey they're going through, they're just trying to tell you how to fix it. And you're like, you wrote this for you, and that's okay. And if you let us in on that, we would be receptive to what you're saying, So I try and keep that in mind, that like everything that I write about is really because I need to say it to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. Do you miss writing?
Sometimes. I mean, writing sucks. Let's be honest, right? Anyone who actually writes will just say that writing sucks. It's not fun. It's the worst. Your inner critic is like not even on your shoulder. They're just like right in your ear telling you how terrible you are and how every word you write is crap the whole time. Having written is wonderful. And then you feel like the queen of the world. So, I recognizing both of those things, I miss writing, but I also appreciate the fact that like I don't have to sit with my inner critic all the time as much.
Yeah. So for anybody watching this, so Freya and I, when we first met, we were put together as roommates at the Show Me Burlesque Festival.
Yay.
Many years ago. And as we got to know each other while we were rooming, we discovered that we had a really similar trajectory. We were both performers who were also copywriters. And while my life has progressed such that I'm back to getting most of my income from copywriting, yeah, it's, I definitely struggle. And, a lot of my writing, all of my writing, I don't write creatively like at all anymore because it's my job. And so I only write for hire. And, but I still like, it does suck.
I mean, to be fair, I only strip for hire too.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yes. Yeah, it's, I think a lot of people don't think about it like that too. It's like, your job is so fun. It's not a job. Like, no, dude, it's a job. It's totally a job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you feel like this, but I definitely feel like when I was in the thick of it as a copywriter, I mean, writing was certainly not as hard for me, right? Because yeah,
you practice.
Writing, you're practicing, and also, usually I was writing like different sort of corporate communications. So I was like taking the words of a CEO and putting them into marketing or PR, which is just, it's honestly a lot easier to write in someone else. I find to write in someone else's voice, to write pieces that are just sort of like, here's the practical thing. It doesn't have to, it just needs to, it's certainly an art to still make it, brief, to make it clear, to make it concise. But it's also not as much as doing creative writing. And then I also was just like, I spend all day with words trying to make things work. Like, why am I going to go home and write more words?
Yep.
So,
and that's exactly where I am now. Like, I do a lot of ghostwriting for executives, and
so do you miss writing?
I haven't written creatively in ages, like years and years, because it's a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like, if you were a plumber, would you want to come home and like, no, that's a horrible, I don't,
so
but
my dad,
I mean,
both my parents are doctors. My dad is a medical doctor, and my mom is a mental health doctor. And so, as kids, we used just to joke that like, we were the what like other kids would go to the ER because they broke something. Like I broke my ankle, and my parents were like, if in 3 days you still can't step on it, we will figure out what to do, right?
No.
So I feel like that's also the thing, right? They were like, we don't want to have to deal with your stupid whatever you have going on. Like it's probably not that serious. Walk it off.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's probably some things I need to unpack about that. Like for the most part, I'm like, yeah, it made me grow up tough. And then now sometimes I think about my decisions and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be as tough and I should be more sensible.
Yep. So, do you have any daily rituals?
I mean, I used to.
Before the
Honestly,
world exploded.
So, I mean, if we can we talk a little bit about the current situation?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So, I mean, I know I try and keep those a little bit separate because again, with so I have not to be like I have a big social media following, but that's usually the people the folks I'm still talking with, right? And I try and keep it a little lighter because I know that people come there for an escape, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like they're like if I open the news or look out my door, this is just right in my face. So I go online to like have that little bit of a fantasy, which is what burlesque is and all of that. But yeah, honestly, the last couple of weeks, I just have been trying to give myself time to grieve because I had finally, it took me 10 years to get to a point where I felt that performing and booking and producing as a career had become something that was sustainable for me. Mm-hmm. And that was really exciting, right? Like I didn't know if I was ever going to get there. So to have that and be living with that and just feel like this is great. And now I can explore and grow in other ways. I'm not just hustling so hard. And then for that to disappear in a day, right?
Yeah.
And to know that things are going to return, but we're never going to be at the same normal that we were. We're going to find a new normal. I definitely have just like been allowing myself time to grieve what that was and to grieve like my own feelings and my own sense of self-worth as an independent performer and producer, which is a thing I think not a lot of people are quite talking about right now. But I mean, if you work for yourself, as you know, as a freelancer, anyone out there who works for themselves, like our sense of self-worth is totally tied to our productivity and how much money we made off of a gig or how many gigs we booked and all of those things. And that's okay. But, that's not what life is. And so, I've just been sort of like allowing myself to feel my stupid feelings, which sucks.
Yes.
So I've sort of let go of any of my sort of daily rituals for a while and just sort of allowed myself to not wallow in it, but just really give myself the time to process, as opposed to distracting myself and having, doing things like business as usual or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So that's my long story of what's happening to me right now in time and space. But otherwise, I mean, I should have a lot of daily rituals that I don't really. I try and stretch every day. Like that's one way that I get just into my body and out of my head. And I can kind of tell a lot of things about my mental state by like where my body is physically. Yeah. So, just being able to like have that check-in and have that check-in without judgment, which is also really hard, right? Because I'm a fairly flexible person. Like I do drop splits on stage and stuff. I'm not a contortionist by any means, but I say I do drop splits on stage and like just like because there's lots of performers who do that, taking for granted the fact that for most folks that's just not ever going to maybe be available to them.
Yeah.
But checking in on those things and just seeing where my body is and those days where it feels tight or it's like I don't want to stretch that way or anything like that, is really helpful to me. And that might be at the end of the night, right? Like it's not necessarily like I get up in the morning and I do this and I do this. I hate mornings. They're the worst. Dude, and as someone who performs regularly until 2 a.m., it's not a thing I do. My mornings are like, I crawl out of bed with like one eye open and I like come and get my coffee and like sit and, scroll through Instagram and like look at my friends' pretty butts for an hour before I'm ready to like actually start working on anything. Yes. which is not the best daily ritual, but I guess that still counts.
I don't know. Waking up and looking at butts sounds fine to me.
I mean, that there you go. That's what you get, YouTube. The key to a successful career is to wake up and look at butts.
Yes. So, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Did you think you were going to be a journalist? Like,
oh my God, I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was 6 years old, which is hilarious for a lot of reasons. Because imagine a 6-year-old walking up to you and saying they want to be an archaeologist. But like, I love old things, and I was like, you get to dig in the dirt and you get to find cool old things and you get to put together puzzles. Like everything that I knew about, like from movies and stuff, was like, that was my dream job. And then I always loved writing, so I was like, maybe I want to be a writer. But I am definitely like a bit of a like chaotic energy. So I was like so all over the place with what I wanted to be. And you know, I did theater and I did dance and I played the cello. So I like creative arts were always a part of my life. I didn't know if that was going to necessarily be something that was going to turn into a career. I mean, if you would have asked me as like a teenager if I was going to grow up and be a professional showgirl, I would have been like, no fucking way, right? Like, and also as a teenager, I was very much a tomboy, and so I would have been mortified that I would be like showing off my womanly body.
yeah.
But I mean, I think I would have thought it was cool, but I also would have been like, that's not me, that's not who I am. But yeah, so I don't know, I kind of was all over the place. And then in college, I started out as a theater and dance major, and then switched over to journalism because, you know, I like acting. I love acting, but there's so much of like acting school that's all like, tap into your deepest childhood trauma and then talk about it in class. And you know what?
Yeah.
You don't have to fucking do that. You don't, you know, like, and I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I got some real deep childhood trauma that, you know, I work out in therapy,
Right.
not on stage. So, I mean, if you have light trauma, then sure, maybe you can tap into that. But like, if you actually have abuse in your childhood, like it's not healthy to constantly just be mining that for the stage.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I went real off track with that question, but yeah, basically I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah.
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm working it out right now.
Everybody's like grown up path is totally different now. Like this whole like 6 weeks stuck in the house thing is going to make everybody reevaluate where they're going to be when they grow up.
I was already sort of not reevaluating. I love my job. I'm so thankful that I'm able to do what I do for a living. Like it's amazing. It's a dream job. It's stupid how fun it is. But at the same time, it's like, you know, do I want to be putting my body through this 5 nights a week? I can't do that forever. What if I get injured? What are my other options? So I was sort of already looking into being like, what can I do to supplement and diversify as a freelancer is a thing to do. So yeah.
What's the best piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
As a freelancer, as like a entrepreneur, what can you do that will make you $100 today?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I feel like when you're a freelancer, when you own your own business, especially if you're wanting to start your own school, there's so many different emails and things pulling your direction. And there's so many different things that you have to do, right? Your to-do list is just miles long. Yep. But when you start to get overwhelmed, look at that list and say, what on these things like can I do to make myself $100 today?
Yeah, that's good.
I love it so much. It's like, not to like plagiarize myself, but whenever I get asked that question, I say that because it just continues to be the best piece of advice I've ever gotten.
Yeah. What's some advice you wish someone had given you?
I mean, I don't know. I've made a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of things that I wish I could go back and tell my former self not to do or to do differently, but I wouldn't know the things I know if I hadn't done them. Also, I'm not very good at like listening to other people. So probably if someone would have said, don't do this, I would have run exactly in the direction that they told me not to go in. I don't know what piece of advice I wish someone would have given me. I mean, probably just like chill the fuck out a little bit. I think it's so stressful to be in charge of your own finances and then your own like life as a freelancer, like no matter what you're dealing with. And so again, when, you know, your self-worth is wrapped up in how many gigs you can get a month and all of those things, it's really stressful, and it's hard not to be stressed. But I think if you can, like, just chill the fuck out a little bit, you know, just recognize that it's not the end of the world if, yeah, anything is probably not the end of the world based off of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, most of us are going to make it through this. So if we can make it through this, we can make it through everything.
Totally. I know. I feel like we're all going to come out of this with like some different traumas we didn't know that we had,
Right.
but we're also all going to come out of it maybe like a little bit more just aware of like how resilient we actually are. And so like, that's not a bad thing. You know, I think it's going to be, we'll just hope that those will equal each other out instead of like one be really high and then the other be low.
Yep. What's something you're learning right now?
Something I'm learning. Oh, I am learning to sing right now, which is very scary for me.
Oh, awesome.
Because I MC a lot and I MC with a live band. I really want to be able to like have a song if we need to stretch a show out or even just to add variety to the show. And I was singing a couple years ago. I had a song I was doing and then we changed the show format. And so I want to get back to that, but I have to get back into practice. And so I don't have the best voice. I also am in Nashville where there's just the most incredible musicians you'll ever find.
Yeah,
so
no pressure.
the stakes seem really high. Yeah, but they're not. You know, I'm singing like ditties about, you know, sex and things like that, you know, or like Fever and songs that are not like difficult songs to sing. But it's making a way that they're entertaining and then also like, you know, finding my voice in a literal way there. So it's good practice. It's also good practice to just do things that you're bad at and just allow yourself to learn instead of to be like, this must be perfect right from the bat. And if it's not, then I'm going to never do it again, you know? So
yeah, that's the thing I super struggle with because I want to sing. When I was a kid, I sang. And at some point I like had a bad experience and stopped singing entirely. And my partner, my life partner, my spouse, made a deal with me and had me sing for an act with him. And we did it in Knoxville and
what
it was
did it mean?
super traumatizing for me.
No.
Luckily I was in an absolutely ridiculous costume and whatever. And I think that kind of put me off because I feel like I need to also kind of get my singing chops back because of having stretch time and shows and things.
Mm-hmm.
And like, to me, singing is almost more vulnerable than putting my entire body out there.
I feel that. I mean, I think for one thing, folks are used to, like, we hear people sing all the time because we're listening to music and like we watch shows. And specifically with that, like we're hearing like the best recorded version of someone's voice that's also maybe been auto-tuned and it's been like engineered, you know? So I do think that not that necessarily there's a lot of pressure, but in the same way that like we're taking our bodies on stage and saying, you know, you could have a supermodel body. It's still going to look different than a body that you've seen in a magazine, right? Like, you know, for example, like Bunny B, who is like literally a former Playmate, but she gets on stage and her body is not going to look like it would have looked in Sports Illustrated because it's not the same like well-lit manipulated image that you're seeing. Exactly. So so putting a body on stage is different. And the same way I think with singing, right? And it's like, so singing a song publicly is just going to sound different, of course, depending on the acoustics of the room and like all of those things, no matter what. But then I feel you on definitely, it feels more vulnerable to me because it also feels like a thing that I can confidently like bullshit my way through a lot of stage stuff, but singing is not a thing that I feel comfortable. I hope someday to get to the place where I feel like my voice is going to be strong enough for me to just bullshit my way through if I screw up a line or a note, right? But I am just not there yet. And now whenever that happens, I'm like, oh no, everything is terrible. And like everything went wrong, you know?
Yep.
So yeah. Well, I mean, I maybe we should just sing to each other once a week. We can have a like work on it and just commit to doing that. Maybe that would be helpful.
Hmm. That would mean I get to interact with you more. I'm okay with that. So.
Sounds good. Yeah. And I promise, to be supportive and clap for you and tell you that you're a good bean. So,
um, okay. I've almost taken your whole hour. So how about do you have pockets in what you're wearing right now?
I do. I realize now with this like faux sound booth that I'm in that wearing black, I might look like a weird floating head. But I'm wearing this like really cute mesh dress and it has pockets. You can't see, but it's like a cute little skater dress with pockets.
Is there anything in your pockets?
No, there's nothing in my because it just came out of the wash. So
Sweet.
yeah. And I was good and remembered not to leave anything in the pockets.
Right on. Um, let's see. What do you do to recharge?
I love to be lazy. That's like the most indulgent thing for me. Like I love to, again, with mornings being rough, like I love to lay in bed in the morning and like I will like snuggle with my cat. That's like not a euphemism, like my actual cat. And I love to just, I mean, I don't necessarily watch bad TV, but I love to like just binge watch TV shows on the couch and just feel unproductive and not like rhinestone and watch TV or like
Yeah.
like there are a lot of people who are super productive and that's wonderful for you. But for me, if it's my downtime, like I just want to be doing nothing. I want to like eat chips and watch TV and just be as lazy as possible.
Yep. Yep. So, last question. Um, what's your motto?
Ooh, my motto. Um, so I think for a long time my motto was dare to be seen. And I truly believe that in like all the ways of like being seen physically, which is a big thing when I teach my students in burlesque, is a lot of times people try and really like cover up your body with movement, right? So you're like, if I move really
Yeah.
fast, no one can see who I am and that I'm nervous. And it's like, no, I just like, can you stand there and just allow yourself to be taken in, which like I know I'm sure you also talk about stillness on stage and how important that is.
Hmm.
And like Lola Le Soleil is like the queen of
Dude,
stillness. Like,
yes.
I mean, no one can hold stillness the way that she does. It's like my jaw drops to the floor every time I see her perform. But I think daring to be seen with, the way that you write, the way that you live your life, the way that, again, like you're talking about with your politics, with your body, with your vulnerability, like daring to just be seen as who you are. I think the more that we do that, the more we allow other people to do that. And then collectively, we can allow ourselves to, yeah, be authentic. And like, that's what we all want, right?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. So, stick around for a second. We're gonna
Mhm.
wrap this up. Say goodbye to everyone.
Bye. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you guys.